Uvlalutak, good morning. First, allow me to acknowledge the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations and thank them for welcoming us onto their shared ancestral unceded territory. Allow me to also acknowledge all of the Inuit present for this IMPAC5 conference. I would be grateful if every Inuk in the room could please stand and be recognized for their individual and collective work to safeguard our marine environment and our culture. I know you're in the room. Amen. I'm also grateful to the Government of Canada and in particular Kathy Graham, also Minister Guilbeault, Minister Murray, and also Trish Nichols for assisting me in getting here and dealing with the logistics around this event. They've invited me to address climate change and the importance of conserving biodiversity in relation to the marine environment. As reflected in the preamble of an important agreement in favor of our relations in Nunavut, in ancient times, the sea mammals and all life in the sea were created from the fingers and hands of a woman who lives in the vast Arctic Sea. She is the mother of the sea, and when she is angry, the seas are rough and dangerous, and there is no food. She is angered when people do not care for her and the life that she has created. Inuit respect and honor her and all life stemming from her as a symbol of our reciprocal relationship. Like many other Indigenous peoples across the world, our legend is profoundly connected to us, our spirituality, and our views of marine stewardship. This map illustrates that Inuit Nunat, or the traditional homelands of Inuit, from across Chukotka in Russia, Alaska, Canada, and Kalaalleq Nunat, or Greenland. The map also makes clear that we inhabit a vast coastline of the circumpolar Arctic. This marine environment and its biodiversity are significant and important to every Inuk, to all Inuit. So my presentation will address the background of the Inuit Circumpolar Council, the inherent rights of Inuit to marine environment, as well as the right to protect and manage this environment based upon our knowledge and sustainable practices. I'll also offer a quick survey of the Inuit advocacy related to the global challenge of climate change and conserving biodiversity throughout the Arctic marine environment. Though Inuit are distinct to the Arctic region, our people and our traditional territory are important globally, important to everyone. Based upon our relationship with the Arctic Ocean and its coastal seas, we have a responsibility to be fully engaged in all matters concerning their conservation and protection. Furthermore, Inuit must work with Indigenous peoples and all others worldwide to sustain a healthy, functioning marine environment because the Arctic is crucial to global ecosystem services. In 1977, June, in Utqiagvik, Eben Hobson, who's recognized as the founder of the Inuit Circumpolar Council, in his welcoming address to the delegates from Alaska, Canada, and Greenland, he stated, "Our language contains the memory of 4,000 years of human survival through the conservation and good managing of our Arctic wealth. Ours is the language of the very environment that challenges the environmental safety of existing offshore technology. Our language contains the intricate knowledge of the ice that we have seen no others demonstrate. Without our central involvement, there can be no safe and responsible Arctic resource development. Hobson was invoking powerful perspectives about language, culture, sustainable development, Indigenous knowledge, and our right to be directly involved in Arctic issues. At the time, the threat of offshore oil and gas development and a proposed ban on Aboriginal subsistence whaling within the International Whaling Commission were looming. We, as Inuit, had to unite, organize, and raise our voices at the international level. In his welcoming address, Hobson further stated and focused upon how geopolitics and geostrategic forces beyond our control threaten to destabilize Inuit self-determination and the economic, social, and cultural security of our people and the Arctic. His foresight and his objective of uniting Inuit across imposed national borders remain at the core of the work of the ICC. One of the key imperatives for our direct involvement is to ensure that our legal rights, our human rights, as Inuit, are uniformly respected. In order to begin this enterprise, Hobson focused on the principles and elements necessary for the world community to understand the content and significance of our rights and interests, which subsequently emerged as the ICC Arctic policy. Importantly, this work, our work, has influenced an impressive list of other developments at the international level, including those matters related to the marine environment. I think that it's significant that 46 years ago, Inuit were advancing the need for a coherent, cohesive Arctic policy. Decades later, and now, many other forces, including those far from the Arctic, and for their own purposes, are now drafting and adopting Arctic strategies and Arctic policies. On behalf of Inuit, I was fortunate to be directly involved in the International Indigenous Human Rights Standard Setting exercises to outline the Aboriginal legal rights that Hobson touched upon in 1977. In my view, it's imperative that all others understand the nature of human rights. Human rights are universal. They attach to all human beings, including Inuit. Human rights are interrelated, interdependent, interconnected, and indivisible. If a single right is violated, all other rights are impacted. Human rights are inalienable. They cannot be destroyed or extinguished. Governments or others may violate our rights, but again, it's crucial to understand that human rights cannot be destroyed. And in relation to our distinct status as Indigenous peoples, our rights are pre-existing or inherent. The rights affirmed in the International Bill of Rights, or more specifically, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the International Covenants, offer important precedent. The affirmation of the right of self-determination and its realization, as well as the reference to subsistence from an Indigenous perspective, are central. From an Inuit perspective, I want to note the final sentence of Article 1, Paragraph 2, which unequivocally states, "In no case may a people be deprived of their own means of subsistence." If one understands our hunting, fishing, and other harvesting rights, this explicit language must be understood to support our diverse, interrelated rights, which go far beyond the English term subsistence. Allow me to briefly share some points concerning the trilogy of Indigenous-specific human rights instruments that have emerged from 3 different intergovernmental organizations: the International Labor Organization, the United Nations, and the Organization of American States. It is significant that the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, its preamble in particular, makes the linkage between Indigenous peoples' lifeways and the environment and recognizes the crucial role that we, as Indigenous peoples, play in relation to sustainable and equitable development and the management of resources. Article 3 affirms our right to self-determination equal to all other peoples without discrimination. The right of self-determination is recognized as the prerequisite for the exercise and enjoyment of all other rights. Clearly, the term prerequisite means that recognition of and respect for our right of self-determination is required in order for us to maintain our cultural security, including our reliance upon the marine environment. The UN Declaration also makes important references. Article 25, recognizing our distinctive spiritual relationship with our lands, territories, waters, and coastal seas, and other resources, as well as the responsibility that we have to future generations. Just a quick footnote, in an earlier draft of this article, it did include sea ice because of the influence of Inuit. But because sea ice was not recognized as universal, it fell away on the drafting room floor. But again, it's significant. Article 29 also makes note of conservation and protection of the environment, as well as our territories, which include the seas. In addition, the state responsibility or state obligation to provide programs for conservation and protection without discrimination. Articles 41 and 42 create further obligations on the part of governments and the United Nations to assist in the realization of all of the rights, the interrelated rights within the UN Declaration. And Article 43 is important language, affirming that the rights recognized in the UN Declaration constitute the minimum standards for the survival, dignity, and well-being of the Indigenous peoples of the world. And think about this, it's significant. The ILO and the Organization of American States have pronounced and underscored the important synergy between these 3 Indigenous-specific instruments, indicating that they are complementary and mutually reinforcing. Therefore, UN member states and others, as well as Inuit and other Indigenous peoples, must be aware of all the relevant norms and all other human rights instruments upholding our status, rights, and role as Indigenous peoples. Significantly, the ICC Arctic policy and the international human rights instruments substantively address the importance of Indigenous knowledge, the intricate knowledge that Eben Hobson invoked, which is a moral and legal imperative for understanding our approach to the marine environment, including the Arctic Ocean and its coastal seas. In the context of renewable resource management, Inuit have affirmed that we are an integral part of the Arctic ecosystem. And we underscored our profound relationship with the natural world and all its dimensions, including our harvesting and management practices, and that our knowledge and experience must be central elements for effective resource management. In addition, the ICC Arctic policy, in the context of renewable resource management, underscores that Indigenous knowledge and scientific research are both valid systems of knowledge and should be integrated and utilized in order for policymakers and decision makers to have the best available knowledge to understand and inform the decisions that they make. In addition, consistent with Inuit rights of self-determination and self-regulation of renewable resources, Inuit should take a lead role in the planning and undertaking of Arctic research. The UN Declaration, Article 31 specifically, affirms our right to maintain, control, protect, and develop our cultural heritage, traditional knowledge, and intellectual property. And again, the state obligation to take effective measures to recognize and protect the exercise of these rights. The American Declaration embraces systems of knowledge and goes even further by linking our knowledge to our cultural identity and our cultural heritage. And it also underscores the importance of Indigenous knowledge and its intergenerational dimensions in relation to education. Because of the significance of Indigenous knowledge, the Inuit Circumpolar Council has developed its own definition of Indigenous knowledge as a systematic way of thinking applied to phenomena across biological, physical, cultural, and spiritual systems, based upon evidence acquired through our direct and long-term experiences and extensive and multi-generational observations. In addition, Indigenous knowledge goes beyond observations and ecological knowledge, offering a unique way of knowing. We've also underscored the need and the potential for the co-production of knowledge, which requires creative and culturally appropriate methodologies and technologies that use both IK, or Indigenous knowledge, and science applied across all processes of knowledge creation. Across the Arctic, and many have heard this, our people are seeing diverse impacts of climate change. This is a fairly lengthy list. Obviously, I won't go through it because of time, but from algal blooms to sea ice loss, a whole host of impacts. Climate change has also brought increased vessel traffic across the Arctic. So turning to Inuit advocacy within the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change and the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, allow me to share some concrete examples of our engagement that aims to bring forward our perspectives on the long list of adverse impacts that our people have identified based upon their own observations and their own monitoring. Inuit, through the sociocultural region defined as the Arctic by the United Nations, are active in the newest constituted body of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, where we have intentionally advanced a wealth of information on the content and the contours of Indigenous knowledge. Furthermore, it's safe to say that we're the only Indigenous peoples organization to highlight the interconnections between biodiversity, climate change, and the importance of the marine environment. More specifically, we raised our voices within the UNFCCC plenary sessions at the various COP meetings, urging state party members to maintain the agenda item of oceans on the UNFCCC agenda. Some in the room may know that there was the potential for this crucial issue of oceans to fall off the UNFCCC agenda. We have done the same within the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or the IPCC. The ICC is the only Indigenous peoples organization with observer status within this UN entity. As all are aware, the IPCC is responsible for assessing the science related to climate change. Because of the significance of Inuit knowledge about the impacts of climate change in the Arctic, we felt responsible for ensuring that Indigenous knowledge is recognized and respected in an ethical and equitable manner. We have therefore reviewed IPCC reports and served as contributing authors to this important work. In addition to the UNFCCC and the IPCC, other examples of work to protect the marine environment include engagement in the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, the recent agreement to prevent unregulated high seas fisheries in the Central Arctic Ocean, the Food and Agricultural Organization, and our extensive work within the Arctic Council. Within the International Maritime Organization, as the only Indigenous peoples organization with provisional consultative status, Inuit are working with others to decarbonize the global fleet and ensure that those that transit the Arctic Ocean do so in a safe and sustainable manner. In relation to UNCLOS and the recent emergence of deep-sea mining of rare earth elements, this is a very real threat that requires the introduction of Indigenous voices and perhaps, like the Central Arctic Ocean Fisheries Agreement, application of the precautionary principle. In relation to the marine environment, we have completed numerous substantive projects that reveal the significant relationship that we have to marine mammals and our shared habitat, as well as Indigenous knowledge. For Inuit, marine conservation is ultimately an act of securing food sovereignty and Inuit rights. As noted in the Food Sovereignty and Self-Governance Report, it is important to remember and understand that the walrus, char, beluga, and salmon are intimately interconnected to each other and all other parts of the ecosystem. Like the nature of human rights, again, everything is interrelated, interdependent, and indivisible. If one element is altered, you impact the whole. The walrus, char, beluga, salmon, and Inuit share the environment and are species within ecosystems teeming with bowhead whales, seals, polar bear, cod, seaweed, and on land, caribou, freshwater fish, muskox, berries, roots, and bird eggs. Through our persistence, we're working to move away from the approach that has historically dismissed our knowledge and our way of life. There is a need for the world community to support a dynamic that respects and recognizes our knowledge and the necessary elements for the equitable and ethical engagement to co-produce knowledge. Triggered to a substantial degree by our input, we are slowly seeing evidence of this dynamic in various contexts. Specifically regarding Savajuak or Pikiala-Sosuak on the Greenland side, I was fortunate to recently nominate this ICC project for the Earthshot Prize, which was created by Prince William and designed to find and grow solutions to safeguard and repair our planet. This is an unparalleled project of global significance that will hopefully result in the permanent protection of Inuit culture and governance together with Arctic marine biodiversity and irreplaceable ecosystem services. The project reflects the desire of Inuit to exercise and enjoy our rights and way of life, undisturbed by the perils of industrialization. The Savajuak and Pikiala-Sosowak project would ensure that our people and ecosystem continue to thrive based upon our profound knowledge of the sea ice, waters, and marine mammals. In my view, and consistent with international law, Arctic countries and partners have an unprecedented opportunity to implement a human rights-based approach to marine management through solutions that recognize Inuit lifeways, worldviews, cultural identity, and values. Furthermore, it's my personal hope that a mosaic of marine protected areas based upon Inuit ownership, control, and management can be established across the whole of our traditional territory. We anticipate that this project will garner support through the Earthshot Prize, but even more important, it must gain the support and attention of the Government of Canada and Denmark, also the governments of Nunavut and Kalatlit Nunaat, or the Greenland government. Allow me to share a brief video generated at the conclusion of the original ICC Pikiala-Sosowak Commission.
High up in the Arctic, between Canada and Greenland, long, cold winters cover the sea with thick ice for months at a time. The ice makes life difficult for whales, seals, walruses, and seabirds that need open water to feed and breathe. Ice also reduces the light getting through to the tiny ocean plants that power the food web. But in some places, wind and water currents prevent ice from forming. These areas of open water, called polynyas, are vital to Arctic life. The biggest of the Arctic polynyas, the Pikiala-Sosowak, or North Water, is found here. Pikiala-Sosowak means the great upwelling, describing the abundant life dependent on the upwelling of nutrients. The Pikiala-Sosowak is a winter oasis for animals. It supports a great diversity and quantity of globally important animal life. Millions of little auks and 90% of the global narwhal population, among other great whales, walruses, seals, and polar bears can be found here. It's also essential for the Inuit who live around it.
This area of the polynya is very important for our region, because our sea mammals, narwhals, bowhead whales, in the wintertime, they migrate to these polynyas, including the one we're meeting about. And it's very important for the survival of our hunting culture.
Inuit in the region are concerned about the future of the Pikiala-Sosowak and the futures of their communities and families. Climate change is eroding the sea ice, making the area more accessible, and there's a growing interest in the region as a tourist destination and as a source of resources. Local people are already seeing signs of international interest.
I think it's just a matter of time. We haven't seen it's going to be going through Pikiala-Sosowak right to right to our communities. It's happening already, and we've seen it.
To act on the concerns of Inuit in Canada and Greenland, the Inuit Circumpolar Council appointed 3 commissioners and established the Pikiala-Sosowak Commission. They spent months traveling to the communities most closely tied to the Pikiala-Sosowak, finding out how people want to respond to the challenges of preserving it. The 3 commissioners have now done their work, and the Inuit Circumpolar Council is working to implement the Commission's recommendations. The former commissioners say the way forward is clear.
We have heard from the communities. Now, I think it is so very important to implement our recommendations and for the governments to fully understand and be engaged in moving forward with those recommendations.
We often say that the Inuit are already there, build our capacity so we could help you with the work that you want to do in either protecting the area or managing the area and monitoring the area.
But it has to happen now. We cannot wait for 5 more years or so, because development is so fast. All peoples are deeply dependent on the well-being of Pikialasorsuaq.
For more information, visit www.pikialasorsuaq.org.
Especially to the IT gurus that figured out how to upload the YouTube video here. And though the Arctic Ocean only comprises about 1.3% of the global ocean, and obviously Sifajuaq and Pikialasorsuaq even less, this would be a significant contribution to the goal of 30 by 30, especially because of the Arctic Ocean and its importance to the entire planet. As a single people, we will persist. We will maintain our kinship, our hunting, fishing, and harvesting, our knowledge, and will also further strengthen our self-determination in order to ensure that there will always be Inuit on this planet for generations to come. Recognition of such imperatives will help to address the climate crisis and conserve marine biodiversity. Ultimately, this is what we seek in relation to the marine environment, an Arctic marine environment that is crucial to our existence and to that of the entire planet. Qiyanak, qiyanak suaq, qiyanak bak.